So what's the premise of this movie? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we need to talk about the premise of the movie, the Many-Worlds theorem, and then what else? The meaning of consciousness. What happens to consciousness when the universe is split? And that's pretty much it.
Can you explain a little bit more about 7 and 8? I did some research of my own, and I ended up being just a little bit confused about what you were asking about.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, who asked that question? Was it you, Rachel?
Yes.
All right, good. Give yourself 5 points. Yeah, we'll definitely go over those questions. All right. Sliding doors. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. Well, my iPad is still connected. Here's the big picture of time travel, guys. Either we live in a static universe or we live in a dynamic universe. All right, those are the only options we got. Speaking of the static universe, that's Einstein's universe. We've been discussing Einstein's universe. All right, so it's a block universe. If it's a block universe, what happens? Destiny is in charge. So destiny is gonna rule, which means that the free will is an illusion, right? Can you do time travel in this universe? The answer to that question is no. You cannot even control the present. You have no control over the future. The past is the past. Obviously, you cannot change the past. All right. So everything is fixed within this block universe. All right, block of universe. So you're not going to be able to change anything. Yeah, block universe gives you satisfies the first condition of time travel, which means that the time is a continuum, but there's nothing you could do to change it. It's like a 4-dimensional movie. You're living in it, and you're here just for the experience of it. There's nothing you could do in this universe to change anything. All right. Now, supporting evidence that we looked at, and supporting evidence is not proof, by the way, just evidence, because you can find evidence for just about anything and everything you want. All right, so we end up cherry picking the evidence. We decided that, hey, psychic experiences, if you believe in them, obviously you believe in the block universe. I gave you one life experience from my own life, and that was kind of convincing enough that this could be a block universe. We got the deja vu experiences. All right, if they are true, if they're reliable, obviously that could be the supporting evidence. We looked at the time traveling porn. All right, this was actual research from the Sixth Sense that you guys were looking at, the documentary on Sixth Sense. And some of the biologists claiming that free will is an illusion. Obviously, I should probably include that. Okay, the problem with the static universe, this portion, it does not allow time travel. All right, so we're done with that. All right, so the universe could be static. If that's the case, it's a 4-dimensional movie, and we're just here for the experience of it. This universe requires a supernatural being to create it, which is fine if that's what you want to believe in, but that's not a scientific way of looking at it. All right, we don't want to invoke any sort of supernatural beings to create the universe. That's not the scientific way of doing it. So what we will do today, we're going to move on to the dynamic universe. All right, dynamic universe is once again, it's going to have the same assumption, which means that the time is going to be a continuum, hopefully, except it's going to come in 2 flavors. It's going to come with 2 flavors. One is the Copenhagen interpretation. The other one is the Many-Worlds interpretation. All right, let's talk about the Copenhagen interpretation briefly. We will keep going back to this one. Copenhagen interpretation is the mainstream interpretation of quantum theory for the past 60, 70, or 80 years, more like it, or used to be until the Many-Worlds interpretation came along. Copenhagen interpretation is the observation-dependent universe. All right, so write it out. This is the observation-dependent universe, or the observer-dependent universe. Either way you look at it, that's fine. In the Many-Worlds interpretation is the observer or observation-independent universe. This one is independent universe that we're looking at. All right, simplistically speaking, all right, let me just pull them out. So we got 2 universes. One of them is observation-dependent, the observer-dependent. The other one is observation-independent, or the observer-independent universe. All right, simplistically, I toss a coin, you got 2 possibilities. It's either gonna land heads or tails. Which one? All right, I'm gonna give you a simple answer for that. I want you to stick with that answer. When you toss a coin, you have 2 possibilities, right? Either heads or tails. So it's gonna be either heads or it's gonna be tails. 50% heads, 50% tails. All right, that's it. All right, so if I were to toss a coin, what is the chance that I'm gonna get heads? 50%. What is the chance that I'm gonna get tails? Once again, it's gonna be 50%. So if I toss a coin, if I catch it, and then cover it, what are the chances it's going to be heads? What are the chances it's going to be tails? 50%, 50%. Guys, until when? Until you make the observation. So as soon as you look at it, what happens? That 50% possibility is going to turn into a 100% reality of one of those outcomes. That's what it means. All right, that's known as the observer-dependent universe. That's known as the observation-dependent universe. That's known as the Copenhagen interpretation. All right, so if everything is happening by chance, and this is known as a dynamic universe or a probabilistic universe, if everything is happening by chance, outcome is determined by an observation. All right. So coin toss, 50% chance that it's going to be heads, 50% chance that it's going to be tails. So that those possibilities will remain as they are until the observation is made. So the act of observation is going to collapse those possibilities into the reality that you're observing. That's it. It's common sense. This one is common sense. This is beautiful. All right. This is the universe where we live in, as far as we're concerned. Many worlds interpretation is weird. This is the observation independent universe. Once again, it is a coin toss. All right. And you catch the coin, it's in your palm. And until you look at it, it's 50% heads, 50% tails, right? It's observation independent universe. If there's no observer, what's going to happen is universe is going to split into two possibilities. In one universe, it's going to be heads. In the other universe, it's going to be tails. That's what it means. All right. So if there are two possibilities, there will be two universes. In one universe, it's going to be heads. In the other universe, it's going to be tails. It's observation independent universe. It's observer independent universe. No one collapses these possibilities into, nobody's observation collapses these possibilities into any of the outcomes. All right. It's observer independent. That means every single outcome is going to come to pass in its own universe. Every single outcome is going to create its own universe. Sounds science fictional. All right. This is commonsensical. This one sounds science fictional. You roll a die, you got 6 possible outcomes, which means that rolling a die is going to create 6 different universes. In each universe, there's going to be a different outcome. In one universe, it's going to be 1. In the second universe, it's going to be 2. In the third universe, it's going to be 3. Those are the outcomes. All right. Now, if you have to pick between these 2 universes, which one would you pick? Most people would go with this one. All right. Copenhagen interpretation. Toss a coin. You got 2 possibilities. In one universe, it's going to be heads. In the other universe, it's going to be tails. And these possibilities will collapse into one of the outcomes through an observation. That means that the observer collapses these possibilities or probabilities into the outcome that the observer observes. That's it. The Copenhagen interpretation. Except the problem with the Copenhagen interpretation, though it's very commonsensical and very agreeable at this moment, because I haven't really challenged this observation as yet, because this is your commonsensical universe. You will go along with it, except this universe is not going to give us time travel. Why not? This universe will not give you time travel. This is the universe where we need to be. So the question is there any evidence for the many worlds interpretation? Is there any evidence for the many worlds interpretation? So that's what we're going to be going after.
So for the many worlds, is it saying that every time you like change your mind, it's going to create another universe?
Okay, say it again.
So for the many worlds, is it kind of like every time you change your mind, it's going to create a parallel universe and split?
Every time you do what?
Change your mind.
No.
Like when you have 2 thoughts.
Hold on. It's kind of floor. I love the way you're going. In no universe, you're in control of anything. All right. Static universe, you have no control over anything. In a dynamic universe, the probabilistic universe, in both universes, you're just a player. All right. It doesn't matter which universe it is. Your free will does not really influence anything. As an observer, you collapse either possibilities into the reality that you're observing, or other possibilities will split into different universes where every single possibility will come to pass. That's it. In no universe you get to play God. All right. The physics does not give you that kind of power, as you will find out. Okay. So time travel. So time needs to be a continuum, static or dynamic universe. That's the assumption that we will make, or else we wouldn't have gravity. All right. Space-time continuum needs to be curved so that you can take shortcuts through the space-time continuum. So that would make time travel possible. And most importantly, the alternate histories need to exist, or else it's going to give us time travel paradoxes. All right. So is there any sort of evidence, supporting evidence for the last one? All right. The first one, yeah, there's supporting evidence. It comes from Einstein's theory of gravity. Space-time continuum, flat or curved, that's very easy to prove or disprove. In alternate timelines, the alternate histories, this is a must, or else we're not going to be able to do time travel. This sort of time travel that we see in the movies, it would be out of the question. So is there any evidence for that? All right, so this is through the wormhole. Is there a sixth sense? Global Consciousness Project. They mentioned
this 3-minute news clip is an excellent brief.
In the sixth sense. All right.
Summary of the Global Consciousness Project.
A question tonight, can you actually measure the emotional outpouring in a worldwide crisis?
Sometimes scientists think that they have done just that. Their machines and computers found a bizarre pattern right after several global disasters.
CBS News' Brendan Keefe explains this phenomenon.
September 11th deeply affected people far beyond New York and Washington. The attack sent shockwaves around the world, a global reaction that triggered a spike in a network of scientific instruments, just like a seismograph during an earthquake.
Each of those showed a similar pattern of change during that day.
Retired Princeton scientist Dr. Roger Nelson believes the emotional focus of millions of people on a single event like 9/11 may form a global consciousness.
Does consciousness interact directly with the physical world?
To answer that question, Dr. Nelson and his colleagues deployed dozens of instruments around the world, random number generators. Basically, they're electronic coin flippers. Instead of heads or tails, each generates a 1 or a 0, 200 times a second. If you flip a coin 100 times, you'd expect a result of about 50-50, 50 heads and 50 tails. But what if every time you flip that coin, it came up heads? Not once, not twice, not 50 times, but 60, 70, or even 80, all of them heads.
We do that every second at each of, now we have about 65 places around the world.
When truly random, the line of data wanders back and forth around 50-50 in a pattern the researchers call a drunkard's walk.
And then in 9/11, it begins not being a drunkard's walk. It goes like this for 2 days.
It may sound bizarre, but Dr. Nelson and his team have been at this for the better part of a decade. The first spike showed up in 1997 with the death of Princess Diana. Other events like the Concorde crash, the Madrid train bombing, and the Pope's funeral all registered on those random number generators. But early on the morning of September 11th, the data went off the charts.
Several hours before the first plane hit. We don't know how to explain that. There's not.
All right. Global Consciousness Project. So I'm going to have a question regarding this one. Global Consciousness Project. What is it? And what is it proved? All right, once again, we're in the supporting evidence column. I'm going to add the Global Consciousness Project to it. All right, so what is the Global Consciousness Project, if it's correct? All right, it is a random number generator, ones and zeros. So it's an electronic random generator, random number generator. It's on the computer. It's either going to give you ones or it's going to give you zeros. So chances that you will get ones and zeros is always going to be 50%. Heads or tails, heads and tails, heads or tails, 50% heads, 50% tails, 50% ones, 50% zeros. That's it. All right. So if it's perfectly randomized, it's always going to give you 50% heads, 50% tails, more or less. You do it a million times, roughly about 50% of the times, you will get ones, 50% of the times, you will get zeros. I don't exactly know how they got this project started or how they noticed what they noticed. They noticed that these random number generators were affected by global events. And they noticed that there would be a deviation from this randomness. Instead of getting 50% heads, 50% ones, 50% zeros, you end up getting like 80% ones, 90% ones, and then 10% zeros, 20% zeros, and so forth. All right. So they noticed that the random number generators, electronic random number generators were sensitive to global events. Also, they noticed on 9/11 that the deviation from randomness started to happen a few hours before the first tower hit. And then randomness, the deviation from the randomness continued for a few hours after the 9/11 events were over. All right, so whether their interpretation is right or wrong, and you understand that this is an interpretation at this point, it's not, I wouldn't consider this pure science, but if their interpretation is correct regarding the deviation of these random number generators from randomness during or before global events, and especially before global events like 9/11, what does that tell us about the sort of universe that we live in, if that information is correct? Are we living in a static universe, or are we living in a probabilistic dynamic universe, if that's the case? What do you guys think?
Static.
Okay, it would be a static universe because?
Because we would have already known it was going to happen. It was meant to happen.
All right, Jen, I'm going to give you 20 points for that one. So that's the question, guys, this description of the Global Consciousness Project. And the fact that on 9/11, deviations started to happen a few hours before the first hour was hit, implies, if the interpretation implies that the information is traveling backwards in time. That's what it means. All right, so which means that we are living in a static universe. So which means that the 9/11 events obviously happened before the first tower got hit, and that information was just traveling backwards in time. All right, once again, this is supporting evidence for a static universe.